loose. The ball is loose. It's picked up, and you can put it on the board.
Immersion 20, 10, 5. The Nectar's making a house call. Touchdown, Houston.
Odom puts one to the ground. Odom off the left side. No one's going to touch him. We'll see you later, Ash Odom.
Is he going to go all the way?
Oh my God.
He is! Kate Stevens all the way for an 80-yard touchdown.
South and Provo goes down. Woods Jr. on a blitz.
And the return by Frank Dawkins up the middle of the field. You gotta be kidding me. And it's brought in. Touchdown, Mexico City.
And with that, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Player Progression Season 10 Reveal Night, whatever you want to call it. No one star is built the same, and that all starts this evening. I'm SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine. Thank you all for being here tonight to get the first glimpse at player progression, how the system will all work. I want to thank our ownership group who has been very instrumental in this process in developing this system with the SFL over the last better part of 3 weeks. I want to thank Ryan Moats, who initially jump-started the player progression concept and through his support in it at an early time in our professional relationship. So thanks to him for supporting that. Thanks to Andrew Rostelli, Director of Player Personnel, who set up the back end of this system on our site, along with myself, Liam Crowder, the league's webmaster. So lots of people involved on this process, and can't wait to go through this all with you. What I'm going to do is go through simply what the player progression system is. Try to do it in a concise way as I possibly can. Then we're going to show off exactly how the progression system will work, how you will submit your initial player, and then answer any and all questions that our player base has, that our ownership may have, in clarifying what is going to happen or what is about to happen here leading up to Season 10. I want to thank everybody in the chat here so far tonight. Mighty RX, DeMar Woodruff, The Walking Greg, Colin Northrup, Frank Gooden, Alex Bonds, Stephen at Large, Ronald Cochran, glad he's feeling better, Liam Crowder, AJ Levy, Jason1347, Ed Adamola, Alex Dominguez, Dwayne Schindler, lots of teams well represented tonight. The Real BK, St. Louis, Sioux Falls, Alaska, Vancouver, San Antonio, among many, many others. So appreciate you all tuning in tonight. Everyone that's not being able to catch this live, I'm sure this will be a video that is watched a lot of times here over the off season as everyone gets refresh on exactly what this system is. With that, we're going to start with the very basic element of this system, and that is a player's value. All right, you're going to hear this term thrown around a lot. And what's up, Eric Vincent? Hey, Hollywood, how's it going? Sonic02, Aaron Arrington, everybody's piling in here tonight. Phil H, just in time, everybody. You're going to see a player's value thrown around a lot. What is a player's value? What's up, Ray Bentley? A player's value does not indicate how talented the player is, okay? Keep that in mind. Does not indicate how talented a player is. It only indicates how much that player costs against the team's salary cap, okay? That's what a player's value is. It is not an overall rating, for example. Like in Madden, if you're a 90 overall, right, that's how talented you are. In the player progression system, a player's overall value is not your talent. It's how much you cost against your team's salary cap. Okay? All Pro Football does not give an overall rating of a player, and that is by the design of the game. The game's attributes and animations all determine the complete worth of a player that the SFL and All Pro does not necessarily identify as some sort of overall rating, right? It's just the overall value of how the player is weighed against the cap, okay? So that is the cornerstone of player progression, and that is the initial point of emphasis here to start. With that said, we can now dive into the details. All right, let's not get overwhelmed here. Lots of words on the screen, but we're going to go through things slowly here, one at a time. All user players will be able to create their player from scratch at the start of Season 10 within the simulation restrictions imposed by All Pro Football 2K8. Mahmoud Ajalani, you are just in time. You didn't miss anything. If you missed some things, you can rewind the broadcast. We just went over what an SFL player's value is, or you can watch it on demand to catch up. Back to the first point here. So All Pro Football is such a true to simulation game. We're not deviating from anything that we've seen out of All Pro Football. We are simply taking the what All Pro deems to be talented or not talented of a player and utilizing that to our advantage. All right. Second point. Rookies will earn their initial value according to their Discord activity. We've been tracking unsigned members' activity currently in the community since week 8. All right, so we have a list of unsigned players, and everyone will be aware of how active they are, and everyone will, that activity will transfer over into an increased overall value of the player based on their Discord activity. Once a player is signed onto a team, their overall value is determined through player progression. All right, point number 3. Players will be able to adjust their sliders on specific skills like speed, agility, coverage, and will have access to special animations in-game like acrobatic catches. Nothing new there, except for the fact that you'll be able to, instead of just putting a +5 on a player when a player gains an ability at the beginning of the season, you'll actually be able to move the player +1, +2, +3, etc. on that specific slider each and every week according to the progression system. Point 4, and then I'll hold to read the chat here to see if we have any questions on these initial slides. Each week, players will be able to improve their player by simply submitting their adjustments during the player progression day of the week, which will be Tuesday. So, understand that you don't have to do anything special. You don't have to watch a certain amount of hours of YouTube. You don't have to be on Discord and say something every single day. You don't have to chat in the YouTube chat. You don't have to do any of that. You simply just have to be an active SFL player in our community. And on Tuesdays of next season, during the season, you'll have an ability to progress your player through attributes or animation purchases, I guess you can call them, and be able to improve your player in that way with those skills. By the way, I've gotten this question. None of this costs players any money. It does not cost money to upgrade your player. It does not cost you money to play in the league or get any special boosts or power-ups or anything like that. This is simply just, hey, I'm a football player and I'm living out my career, and if I'm working hard to be the best player I can be, then that is what I'm going to get out of the Simulation Football League. I want to go through the chat here, make sure that we don't have any initial questions. Mahmoud Ajalani says, what does it mean by players will be created from scratch? And Director of Player Personnel answered in the chat, and I'll answer here on the archive version of the video since it doesn't have a chat. The answer to Mahmoud's question is you will be assigned a certain value. You'll be able to build your player from the bottom to reach that value. So, for example, if a team says, I have a cornerback position that I'm looking to fill, the value of the player is a 70, then you will be able to go and create that value based on all of the attributes and animations that are available to you from All Pro Football, and you will be able to submit that player to that owner specifically right after you click submit. That's all done through our website, and we'll get to that creation process here in a minute. Armand Rice says injuries should be respected as well, depending on the severity and carry over into the next game. Armand, there's no change, at least right now, as far as I know, from anybody in ownership or from the league level to change the injury rule. Obviously, we don't want players sidelined for 7 or 8 weeks. I understand it's not as simulation as it could be, but this is all about player interaction as well, keeping our stars on the field, giving teams a fair shot at getting a victory, since the 12 stars matter so much here in the SFL. Sonic 0002 asks, so do players that go to the playoffs get better progression? And the Director of Player Personnel says progression does not occur during the playoffs, and that would be correct. Mighty RX says, does progression continue in the off-season? Progression does not continue in the off-season. However, a player's value is in that off-season is determined by what they did during the season. Now, a rookie's value, a rookie's unsigned player value would increase in the offseason because their progression is due to Discord activity. So an unsigned player's progression is Discord activity. A signed player's progression is the in-season progression that they actually put on their player. The Real BK says, will there be a cutoff for progression, say halfway through, or will it be throughout the regular season? That it will be throughout the regular season. There is no cutoff point for that. Adamola, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, is this effective on current veterans? Yes, this affects veterans. Obviously, teams will likely sign veterans to contracts that make sense, and I'll get to that in a moment. That's on another slide. But all players in the league will create their guy the way they want to here in the offseason. Yeah, after week 1 and after the last game of the regular season would be the answer to when does progression begin and end. Alex Bond says, can a player's value be reduced? They can Director of Player Personnel responds, they can sign to a lower value like a pay cut. Won't come into play until next season. So we'll get to that in a minute. We're starting to get to some things on the other slides, so I'm going to advance the presentation. All right, instead of having set abilities at the start of the season, coaches will be able to improve their players each week based on what the emphasis was in practice that week. So coaches, instead of being locked in to a scheme or to a roster setting, will be able to help their players improve in certain areas each week. That's to simulate what a coach would emphasize in practice. After the week, that progression is removed from the player. So no coach progression remains on the player over a long period of time. It's just a point of emphasis for that week's particular game plan. As players reach thresholds, their progression slows to match realistic player capabilities in football. It's easier to become an above-average player than a superstar player. So essentially, in the past, we've had bronze, silver, and gold, what are called tiers. Now those serve as thresholds. Once you reach the overall value of a certain threshold, then it will cost you more progression points to improve your player, based off of the adage of becoming an above-average player is easier than becoming a superstar player. The salary cap will be set for season 10 at $870, meaning the average SFL player's value will be 72.5. A player's value is not a player's skill rating, as we talked about at the beginning. A player's skill ratings are only determined by the individual slider settings, which have different minimums and maximums for each and every position, and we'll get to that creative process here in a moment. Guys, I don't want, just to be clear here, I hope that your questions do not interfere with your ability to track. Obviously, we want to answer these questions. Andrew, maybe wait until the end or hold off so that questions don't turn into more questions, because obviously, you know, we're all trying to get a grasp of this. We're trying to present it as simply as we possibly can. And again, the player creation process will be demoed here in just a minute, and you'll actually be able to use it starting tomorrow. So this is right around the corner, guys, for you guys to be able to play around with this. Adamola asks, can we still allow our coaches to create our players for us? The player creation process is very simple. You obviously can ask your coaches, what do you recommend? That is certainly within the realm of possibility. And then you can obviously build your player off that recommendation. But no, players or coaches or owners will not be literally building the players for you. You would build the player yourself through the creation process. Stephen at Large asks, how are points acquired by rookies in the offseason via Discord? How much activity is required? How is it calculated? The activity is calculated through our bot in Discord. It tracks public conversation, and then it applies levels to the interaction and conversation that these rookies bring. When a player gets to the next level of activity, they will receive a +1 to their overall value from the base value of the position that they enter the league in. I'm still catching up here. Bear with me. Sorry, Alex Bond. I'm not sure when it's going to end. I hope so too. Real BK asks, now in terms of veteran players and such, will there ever be a player regression period for players who play for, say, a set amount of seasons, like 8 or 9? Yes, player regression would be the next step of the process, Real BK. But obviously, we'll cross that bridge when we reach the point of players just maxing out their guys. And that's not going to be occurring anytime soon here. Armand Rice, again, furthering discussions of injuries. Obviously, owners have the opportunity to propose rule changes at the league level if there's a way that you feel like you might be able to improve the way that injuries are simulated. You should get with your owner and have a conversation about possibly suggesting or inputting some sort of suggestion with that rule. But I get what you're saying about performance and their attributes negatively. That's interesting. Sonic 0002 asks, does this apply to a kicker? Yes, kickers will also have progression. Again, SFL Director Player Personnel doing a great job answering all these questions. I am for the archive version of this, going through and answering them myself, and we're pretty much on the same page here with that. Alex Dominguez says, are veteran players going to get a full reset? Not necessarily. Obviously, you could sign a contract that is pretty good, but in terms of your ratings and skill sets, you will be able to determine that at your own, in your own way, as every player will be built in a more unique way through this system is the point. Also, the point players getting to make their own guys and have control. Alex Bond asks, where do star ratings come into play? Again, you can see in the thresholds there in emphasis point 2 here on this slide. Gold, silver, and bronze are thresholds that slow progression. They and those star ratings obviously do come into play when you reach a threshold. Your players' skill sets are going to be at the point where you're going to get a boost in your play because you've reached a specific point in your career where you're considered at a certain level of talent. Fran Gonzalez saying, I hope I didn't miss much. You guys do have the capability to rewind this live stream broadcast right now, or you can watch everything back on demand. This video is going to be here for a while. Aiden Friday asks, are there user player limits per team? And as Director of Player Personnel said in the chat, yes, still 12. All right, so we are off to the next slide here. This is the final slide before we demo the player creation process. It is all integrated through our website. All right, here's a little bit more detail about SFL player progression. In this system, players will be more original, unique. Team builds won't be restricted to the bronze, silver, gold, 3, 4, 5 structure. Cookie cutter SFL is gone. Players can build up specific talents, but those talents will only prove more deadly the better the player becomes overall, as all skills intertwine within all-pro football. A player's value will serve as what they can sign as during free agency. This offseason, that value for veterans will be determined by the team a player signs with. Players may take a pay cut to help keep their team under the cap, reducing their skill ratings. Player progression, pushing teams over the cap during the season, is allowed. So I want to go back to the second point made, talking about all skills intertwining with all pro football. So if you build a player and he has a specific skill set, but the rest of his skills are not anything to write home about, that one great skill that player has won't be as useful until his other skills catch up to his talent. They don't necessarily have to all be maxed out for everything to work, right? But if you're good at only one thing, you can't be great at only one thing. The difference between Madden and All Pro is that Madden is a numerical rating system, which basically says, look, man, if you're a 99 speed, you're going to be a 99 speed, and it does not matter if you suck at everything else. You're going to be super, super fast. In All Pro, it's different. In All Pro, you can be super, super fast, but if the rest of your abilities are not where they should be, you're not going to see that super fast speed take effect in the early stages of your career. Now, it's going to pay off for you down the road as you get better as a player, but you're not going to see those immediate effects because all skills intertwine within All-Pro football, which is one of the things that makes this game great. A little bit more detail on the third point. That value for veterans will be determined by the team a player signs with. That's a team saying, I want a specific build, a specific scheme. Do you fit that build or scheme? It is still up to the player what type of player you want to be, what value you will sign for, nothing more, nothing less, etc. It's still all within the realm of possibility for players. But if you progress to an 82 value, for example, during a season, then that off season you can sign to upwards of an 82. You can't go higher than 82. Forgive me for the stutter there. You can take a pay cut, but you cannot sign at higher than an 82 value because that literally is what your value is to the market. Eruption says, what will we do if, say, we completely max out players and then we would have more rookies? Would we then look for expansion? Yes. The idea is to have more players than we have spots. Those players would sit on the waiver wire waiting to get signed. Those players would have to get into the league initially through the draft. When the player process becomes a supply and demand market. Until then, players will continue to sign freely in the off season and sign deals as they choose. All deals are still one season. Nothing there is changing. Sonic 0002 asked, does height and weight determine skills? No, it does not determine skills. Obviously, if you are a super fast player, but you're 270 pounds, your speed isn't going to do as much for you. Height and weight does factor in to how abilities work. You know, if your player is super strong and he's built super strong, that's obviously going to benefit you. If he's super strong, but he's 170 pounds, that strength is not going to come into play as much as it would if the player was a little heavier. Or, again, if you're trying to be an agile player, but you're a big giant guy, that agility skill set is not going to play as big of a factor as it would if you were built like an agile player. Eventually, after 2 to 3 seasons, says Aiden Friday, wouldn't all of the current players be maxed out and the league be dominated? So let's explain a couple of things that will prevent that from occurring. The first is slowing player progression at silver and gold thresholds. It will cost you more to progress your player each and every week, and eventually you'll get to a level where you can't even progress your player each and every week. It'll be very slow progression, little bit by little bit, because you are almost at the prime of your career. There's not much more you can do. When you look at a player at their prime, what else do you want from them? They're just playing so well, and that simulates that. The second thing that prevents all players from maxing out all across the league is the salary cap. The league will adjust the salary cap up or down based on the average rating the average value of a player in the SFL. And eventually, if you're a team that has a bunch of really, really good players, you're not going to be able to sign them all at their value to make it under the cap before the season begins. So you're either going to have to cut some players that whose value has exceeded what you can pay them, essentially, or those players can take a pay cut by essentially saying, I'm going to move my ratings back down because I really want to sign with this team, and I'll build them back up, and I have no problem doing that. Again, that's one of those sacrifice for the team or go out and get the best deal possible type of situations that players have to deal with. Dark Moon Akuma says, does this mean I have to create a new player again? So no, your player, your guy, your person is still your guy. Like Mahmoud Ajalani doesn't have to create, doesn't have to retire Mahmoud Ajalani. Mahmoud Ajalani will just be built by Mahmoud Ajalani. Makes sense? Like your player is not going to be built, not going to be determined. Their skill set's not going to be determined by what team you sign for, what contract you sign, all that stuff. You are in full control of that creative process, which we are just about to show. All right, so with that, why don't we display the process? Here it is, folks. If I wanted to be a quarterback in the SFL this season, this is how I do it. I get to build my player, and I get to do it my way. So what you'll do is you'll select the team. If you're talking to, let's say, Alaska, and you're talking to them about joining their squad, you'll go to Alaska's team page. All this functionality will be complete and ready for submission tomorrow, so please just be patient. It's right around the corner. You would go to Alaska's team page. You'll see a link that says Become a Part of the Storm. You would see the same thing on Dallas's page, Become a Part of the Roughnecks. You'd hit a drop down and you'd see all the different positions that you can potentially be for Alaska. You would get a screen similar to this. So let's say that you wanted to be Queen City's quarterback. You want to submit your player build to Queen City. So my player name is Dave Stevens. My Discord name is QB number 1. All right, now here you can see the overall value of the player. Again, that is not the rate. That is not how talented a player is. That is simply what the player's value is towards the cap. All right, so let's build a player. I'm a quarterback. I want to be a scrambling quarterback. I want to use my feet to get away from the... I want to be a dual threat guy. All right, so to do that, I need the scrambler animation. When I click the scrambler animation, did you see? My value towards the cap just jumped from 77.8 to 81.05. That skill, that animation, costs money to my team, right? And if I'm trying to sign as an 81 quarterback and that's all I can do, then that's all I can do, right? It's all about the value of the player in what a team is looking for. A team may be looking for a 90 valued quarterback. Let's say that Queen City is looking for a 90 valued quarterback. So I've got Scrambler on my guy. Well, if I've got Scrambler on my guy, I want to boost my speed up a little bit. I want to make sure that my guy can run fast. I'm not so sure that I want to max out my speed though just yet, because I want to be good at some other things. So I've jumped my rating up here to 81.4. So now I want to be super accurate with the ball. We're going to move this up to an 85. Okay, now I'm an 83.12. I don't want to throw picks, man. I want to be really good. Let's start as an 88. Okay, now I've got 85.33 value. Okay, I still have some room to play with. Let's boost up the agility a little bit. This is important for me as a scrambling quarterback. Now, again, this is all proprietary technology here. This is a formula that the SFL has come up with to determine how valuable a rating is. For example, consistency is far more key to a quarterback than strength. So when I jack up the consistency meter, that overall rating is going to go up a lot faster than it would for strength. As you can see, maxing out strength is the difference of maybe 1 overall rating point, but maxing out consistency is the difference of over 2 overall rating points. So you can see the difference in what matters and what doesn't. Now let's say, all right, so I'm done with that. I want my quarterback to be a leader. Okay, so now we're at an 88.66. We're getting close to what the team wants to sign us for. Let's see. Is there any other rating that I want to do? Let's. I want to evade pressure. Well, I can't do it. They want to sign me as a 90. I'm a 91, right? And they may come back and say, hey, look, I told you you could sign as a 90, but because all of our players came in at a little bit over the value, we're going to need to cut your cap down a little bit because we've got to get to the 870 number. So, okay, maybe I want evade. All right, so I'm going to have to go in. Let's see. I'm going to lower pass accuracy just a little bit, but I don't want to lower it too much. I guess for now, I really want to be fast. I'm going to have to lower some consistency. Okay, there I'm in the 90 range. All right, perfect. All right, so I've got my Felder asks, how do you create a player? I'm literally explaining it to you. I just happened to look at the chat here. Now I've got my 90 overall that Queen City wants to sign me as. So when I click submit, if I went to Queen City's page and I said I wanted to be Queen City's quarterback and I got to this screen and I hit submit, this quarterback build is going straight to Queen City's front office. You will get a confirmation email saying that your player has been submitted to Queen City and that the team will be in touch with you. Queen City can review this player and say, hey, is this the player that I want? Is this the quarterback that I want to start out with? Is this the type of guy that I'm looking for? They may say, yes, look, we've got some skills to work on. Pass strength is not very good. It's down near the bottom of what a star player's pass strength would be. You don't have any composure. There's a lot here that you're missing as a quarterback, but I understand that. That's what I'm getting out of a 90 overall quarterback. Otherwise, I would have asked for a much better quarterback. A team can accept your contract and sign you, or they can field other offers, take a pass. They may say, hey, would you mind taking your agility down and moving up your strength to improve your arm? You may agree, you may not agree. It's all about what the player wants for their career, how they want to build a player. And again, each player is different. Here's the running back look. The overall value starting for a basic running back is 77. If you knock all this back down, take everything away from the quarterbacks, they're also a 77, but you see 77.96. 77.81. Running back is a little bit more valuable than a quarterback in the market of the SFL. And you can see that there's all different types of abilities and animations that relate specifically by the position. We've taken all of this, put it on our website, and used minimum and maximum ratings that the All Pro Football video game has deemed of simulation quality, or has deemed, this works best in our game so that people aren't overpowered. You're not going to see 99 speeds or route running or anything like that because it's not realistic. Nobody is rated that high in All Pro because All Pro felt like, hey, that's overpowered. And so all of these ratings are determined to that. I'm going to go back to the quarterback here, and now I'm going to check the chat, and hopefully this inundated explanation is pretty easy to follow here. Erupture Tan says, I assume all the players will not affect the championship game. Absolutely not. The championship game is still under Season 9 rules. Right, so asking about maximum values, All Pro looks at the talent of a quarterback, and it's basically screaming to us, if you jack up a player's ratings higher than they should, you're going to break the game, because the game is meant to be played on a certain platform, if you will, and so we're not going to deviate from that platform. We are simply using the details, the finer details of All Pro to our advantage to create a more custom league. Stonewall on a quarterback. Yeah, actually Stonewall is not necessarily I don't know. I have to look back at the rating sheet. That may be an error. I'll double check that. Good catch, Dwayne. Again, we're in the final stages of development here, but obviously things are still getting cleaned up a bit. Oh, I see what Felder was saying. How do you create a player? Yes, during the process of signing during free agency, you get to submit. If you're a player trying to get on a team, you could submit 120 of these. It doesn't matter how many you submit. It matters that you're trying to find the best possible landing spot for your player and the player that you want to have. So Dark Moon asks, if one has to work through a salary cap to stay with a team, how does he progress from bronze to gold? Very great question. Again, at the beginning of the season, a team has to be under the cap. But during the season, a team can go over the cap. So the cap is just a benchmark at the beginning of the season to keep everybody on a level playing field. After that, players can progress past the salary cap, and they can get as good as they can get over the course of a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, whatever. Now, when the salary cap is reset in the off season, that player, there may not be a market for a superstar player at a specific position, or just for a superstar player that is in a spot where all the other teams have signed all their other superstars, and people just don't have any cap space left. And that's where, if the market is determining that there isn't a market for the value of your player, then that's when you may have to take a lower value just in order to sign with a team and help them get under cap. But obviously, if you decrease your value in the offseason by taking a pay cut from 81 to 77, you can build that back up over the span of 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks and get back to where you were. Kadrian Felder says, okay, so will I get contacted via Gmail or Discord? Felder, if you wanna build your own player, you can start tomorrow on building your player. We'll make an announcement that everything is set up and ready to go. You can build a player and send that player to a number of teams, every team if you wanted to, by going to each team's page and building the exact same player and sending it off. Teams are restricted to sign players until a specific point in the offseason, which hasn't been determined. But here very, very soon, you will be able to start finding a home for your player. And if you're not on Discord, I'm assuming you are, but if you're not on Discord, you'll need to get there. That link can be found on our homepage of our website to join our server. Sonic 0002 says, if a player doesn't submit their weekly slider, does it just stay the same from last week? Yes. A player does not regress because they don't progress, is the easiest way to put it. But obviously, a player not slowly making progress to himself is going to, in the long run, hurt the team, potentially in the short run. You're not going to see a player go from 60 speed to 80 speed in 1 week. Think about it from a simulation perspective. A player just doesn't get that fast in 7 days, right? It's applying progression to skills that you want to eventually be really, really good at, and that is the name of the game with player progression. This is not just a jack 'em all up rating system so that everyone is maxed out. This is a calculated decision by players, by coaches, using their coach progression, their temporary coach progression, and how they want to emphasize specific key points on their team. It's all calculated, and you as a player now get to help your team win. You get to help your team strategize. You get to talk with your coaching staffs about, hey, what's the game plan? What do we need to work on this week? What's good out there? I'm trying to work on this. If a coach says, hey, you should work on this, and you're like, no, I'm going to work on my guy in this other way, then a coach can determine whether he wants to emphasize that with you in practice that week, regardless, by putting those temporary coach points on you. But you as a player always, each and every week, will have say over how your player progresses, and you'll submit that player progression during the season through a privatized Discord players channel, where you will simply tell us what your progression is going to be that week. In those channels, you will find how much your player can progress each week, when you have reached a threshold of a specific attribute, those type of things. So that's all going to be through Discord. Mark Biddix asks, how about the offensive and defensive line? Yes, every position except for, at this time, offensive line will have a player progression system. Right now, offensive line does not. We have not had a star offensive lineman in the SFL in over 3 years. Obviously, it was not a high priority for us to get the offensive line going. Offensive line stars have about the least amount of effect on the game, even the comparison from stars to generics. Now, we potentially could change that by allowing teams to sign star linemen at very low values so that you can pick up offensive linemen as star players for cheap, and you can get more out of them than you would have in the old system. Obviously, that's something that we will be toying with as we move forward with the player progression model. Catching up here to the chat, forgive me. The Real BK asks, and I'm guessing that if someone does get progression points through the season, they will be notified and such through PM, or will it be one massive public alert post? So you get progression every week. It's a flat progression. Later down the line, we may introduce progression based off of activity or boosts or whatever. But through our player survey, we surveyed 100 players, our 100 most active players in the SFL, and we concluded that players wanted a progression system, but they did not want the progression system to be tied to specific activity or involvement, because some people just did not have a time commitment. They would spend more time on the SFL if there was player progression involved, but they just didn't have a huge amount of time to commit, and we did not want to put our players in a bad position. So that stuff could come with time. But for now, you're going to get the same amount of progression as any other player. Whether a player applies that progression is up to them. How they apply that progression is key. And obviously at different positions, there are different threshold values. There are different attributes that progress at different rates. So it's all going to end up being different across the board. Ronnie asks, when submitting, you can have one at quarterback, running back, defensive end, wide receiver, and an owner can sign you at the position they need. Exactly. If you were to, as a player, create every single type of position and send it to every single team, if that's really what you wanted to do, to just have fun with the player creator, you can only sign one contract still. You're still only one player. Ultimately, as a player, you're just trying to sign in a place where you want to be, where you're going to be appreciated, where your player will be able to flourish as you anticipate your player doing. And that's all up to the teams and to the players as they negotiate out their deals. And again, like we said, this is a very unique offseason because the system is launching. When we get to next offseason, your player is your player. The team is going to take it or leave it, right? Because that's your guy. That's how you've progressed. The only way to make an adjustment to a player would be to take a pay cut to sort of move some things back down, and get back to that overall value that you're trying to get to when agreeing with a team. James Richards asks, will there be a free agency pool, i.e. a player can submit a build and then just be in a pool for all the owners to see? Obviously there's a way, there would be a way for us to post all of those player submissions. If you're building a player just generically, you might not get the offers that you might get by attacking specific needs of teams. But obviously, any player that you submit goes to the league, and so the league would have access to post those. We can create a general space for players to submit to all teams if they choose to. Aiden Friday asks, do points accumulate if you don't upgrade a certain week? Yes, to a point, Aiden Friday. You will be able to save points 1 week But to save the points, you have to say on Tuesday, on Player Progression Tuesday, you must notify the league through your team's player channel. Forgive me for the confusing name there. That you are saving those points. A whole team collectively could save all of their points of progression a week if they want to double up their progression for a specific opponent that's 2 weeks down the line. The idea behind that is, if you think about it from the NFL point of view, if we're playing the Cleveland Browns next week, we may not go as hard in practice or as hard in game planning as we would if we were playing the Seattle Seahawks, because the Browns just no reason to sweat over the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, they're a professional organization. Obviously, everybody has the ability to beat everybody. But if you've got a big game, like late in the season, when you're fighting for a playoff spot, you think you've got a winnable game, and you want to double up on your progression across the board, that following week against that opponent, in that game that you really, really need, you absolutely could do that as an individual player, or all the players could come together and say, hey, we're going to hold off a week. If you don't designate to the league that you're going to hold off on your progression, you will lose your points. If you do not progress your player on Tuesday, you will lose your points. This is a hard deadline. This is a 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Central Time change. You have 24 hours to submit what you want to do. A very minor but significant adjustment to your player each and every week to help your player improve and to help your team improve on the field. Director of Player Personnel saying something a little different from what I said, and I'm trying to think long term as a visionary here with the masses. Ultimately, this season, the plan is that if you're interested in a position, first of all, players or teams, when they're recruiting players, would want to post what they're looking for. Since ratings of players are going to be public on the site, it's not going to be a secret that you've got a 77 receiver, right? People are going to know that receiver is a 77. So there's no reason to keep a player's value privatized, because this value of players is literally what they are worth to the market. And so that's going to help teams in the future in free agency when they're looking for specific players to fill specific voids. Everybody will have access to the player ratings of players once they are signed. As you are trying to build a team this offseason, you're really going to need to be upfront with players about what you are looking for through your scheme. If that communication is not there, then and obviously you don't have to post the exact overall rating. You can discuss it with players in private. You can say, look, I'm looking for an above average linebacker, or a super fast linebacker, or a linebacker that's really good at run stopping, or however specific you want to be. If a player entertains your what you're looking for in private message, then obviously then you can talk specifics, get an idea of what that player would look like at the value, and then make the determination on your own of whether or not that's a good fit. Dark Moon asks, so what So who or what determines one's progression from bronze to gold situations for the player, and what determines bronze to gold attribute progression? The player determines all of this. We give you a set amount of boosts each week. The player determines how to use the boosts. If you use the boosts every week, you will progress as fast as you can off of your initial contract. If you miss a week, or you just lose out on progression, or decide not to use them for whatever reason and not save them, then you're not going to progress. It's all up to the player to progress every week, and as long as you're around to make that adjustment, talk to your team, do all that stuff, then you're gonna be a great player in this league. We want our superstar players to be the ones that are here every week talking with their team and making adjustments to making their player better. Think about it as going to practice. We want our best players to be the ones that work the hardest in practice. And applying progression to your player each and every week is the equivalent of you working hard in practice. And you don't have to spend 20 hours to do it. You just simply come in and make that change. AJ Levy asked, you have a page set up for defensive players available for viewing. I can get you one up. It's not, we don't have, and forgive me, it looks, no, we're going to get there. We don't have it fully functional just yet. I'm telling you, it's like 98% complete. I can show one off to you. I'll try to get that up here. Again, not completely fully functional. Just bear with me. Very, very educated questions here tonight, guys. This is going to be great for anybody that listens back to this video and tries to wrap their head around a new system. Obviously, we're trying to make it as simple as it can possibly be while giving you very detailed customization as much as we can. All right, I'll show you. We don't have, like, here's linebackers, right? Like we don't have the animations in yet. Be working on those this evening, but again, you've got a linebacker here. You can see their value is a 65. A linebacker is a lot less valuable than a running back in the SFL, as we've seen. That doesn't mean that the linebacker is less talented than the running back. That just means that the linebacker is a lower value to the salary cap. Mark Biddick says getting guys active is like pulling a gator's teeth. Well, we have a very, very active community now. Obviously, we want it to be better. Through our player survey, players seem to believe that this will help. I believe that this will help. I think any type of involvement you can give to a player is something that is valuable, right? And I think that I think that we have something very valuable here, something unique to the SFL. We've taken player progression, an idea that has been long used in simulation, and finally applied it into our league in a way that makes sense for our mission, which is to be a simulation football product, and what makes sense to our player participation not needing to be a 20, 30, 40-hour commitment a week, something where people can have fun, people can strategize, people can get involved in game planning, and the investment in your specific player is what we believe will continue to drive us forward from an activity standpoint. Dark Moon asks, have you guys decided how many points we will get per week? Yes. It's we want to keep it private for now in terms of how many points you get per week, only because it gets into the nitty-gritty details. We don't have graphics planned. I don't want to kind of go off into the distance here with what's been prepared to be presented tonight. But yes, there is a value of player progression points that you will receive. What each one of these, stamina, coverage, catch, how can you improve those each week? What does each one cost to improve? That sort of thing. We'll get into those nitty-gritty details as we get closer to the season, but we don't need those nitty-gritty details until players actually start progressing in week one of the regular season. Obviously, we'll unveil it way before that so players have an understanding, but we want to get our player channels set up first. We want to get our infrastructure set up first. We want to get players signed under this initial system. But when you submit a player to an owner, you do not have to worry about it being against the rules. You don't have to worry about it being outside of the spectrum of what is allowed, because we are literally forcing you into a simulation style product according to, as you see the overall changing here, according to what All Pro says is simulation. Again, 65 minimum, 90 maximum on aggressiveness for a linebacker is what All Pro football considers simulation, and so that's what we're going to use. The Real BK asks, down the line, will there be player of the game points given out? Yeah, obviously this goes back to what I said a little bit earlier about how later on down the line, players doing specific things on the field and off the field could reward them bonus progression. But for now, introducing the system to Season 10, there is no bonus progression. We're just simply going to have our players progress. And your bonus is being active and being more active than your teammate or other people on your team. You could literally start as the third wide receiver on your team and by the end of the season be at the top of the depth chart, because your value, your talent on the field has surpassed that of your teammate. If you sign a lower value contract, it doesn't mean that you're going to be the lowest, third on the depth chart this season, the whole season, right? That's gone. Now you can actually, you're competing with your teammates for, targets and tackles and, performance, essentially. So this is not only a competition between you and others at your position. This is a competition between you and your teammates, a healthy one, right? Everybody wants to progress. Everybody wants to help the team build. And now you get to have a direct impact on helping your organization get better and improve during the season. You're not just a cheerleader or a fan for your team for 3 months out of the year. You're now engaged and involved in that process. Yeah, Ghost Cat, just watch it on demand, buddy. It's going to be on YouTube. Mighty RX asks, so the caps aren't max stats plus particular bonus. Like speed is 92 for receivers, but you add speed burner and it's 97. So right now, no, that is not the case, right? So any attribute, what we're calling attribute, which was an ability in All Pro that adds to the value of an attribute, right? So Speed Burner was +5 on speed. Speed Burner now does not exist. Speed exists, right? But Ankle Breaker, which previously does not boost any of these values, but unlocks an animation that makes that player perform in a specific way, which drives up the value of the player, that is an animation that can be bought and purchased, quote unquote, with progression points. So any ability that boosted ratings in our current system is no longer in use. Any animation, any ability from our current system that was actually an animation is still in use. So we've replaced those +5s essentially with these slider sets that you are able to to progress over time. Mark asks, when does this all become available? Again, this all should launch tomorrow unless we have any sort of hiccups. This should launch tomorrow. You will be able to create any player for any team. You'll be able to submit it. It'll go directly to the team. You know, and you know, owners can either create a new email address to get all of these things, or just, you know, get all the emails and put them in a folder, right? You know, we don't intend to spam owners' inboxes, but obviously if you want to play for a team, that team wants to know. And that team wants to see what you got, and that team's going to be developing their strategy for the season to try to get under the cap and sign 12 players to do so. The Erupture Tan talking about the dislike to like ratio. This is not a controversial reveal. It's just a bunch of spam who disliked the video even before it started. Ghost Cat asks, I'm sure this has been asked, but who controls where the points go? You do. You do as the player, Ghost. Do non-star players go through the same progression as star players? Asked Mark Biddix. No. However, coaches can choose to spend their temporary coach points from the week on generic players. So if you've got a generic wide receiver and you want to improve his hands, you can do so. Coach points, you get 20 points. So for example, stamina from 80 to 90 is 10, right? But you can only use 5 on any particular player, and you can put those coach points on any particular player on your team. That is up for the coaches to decide. After that week, those points go away, and they get a fresh 20 to put on specific players on their team to match the game plan for that week. It's just another adjustment that coaches will be able to make. So if you're looking at the timetable of SFL games and the timeline of the week, player progression day is Tuesday, coach progression day is Wednesday, playbook submissions will be Thursday, games will get played, and we'll reveal the broadcast schedule, and we'll get all set up for the next week over the next few days leading into the games that will air Sunday through Tuesday, Saturday through Monday, those type of things. We'll have, you know, primetime games and a bunch of games at the same time, just like we did last season with the multiple commentators and commentary teams and all that will all stay the same. But that's just the general layout of the week. for changes due. Tuesday is the player day. Wednesday is the coach day. Thursday is the playbook day. And the league makes all of those adjustments on the back end to prepare you for the upcoming week. The Walking Greg asks, so all of our veteran players will have to be recreated, right? So it depends. If you were to sign a veteran player at right now he's in the old system, right? He's a 4 ability bronze. If you wanted to sign that player to that exact value, and you knew what those values were and how they equated in the editor, in the hex editor, you absolutely could create the exact same player that you have. If you are a guy like, let's say Dylan Rowland, and you say, hey, I want to be exactly who I am. That Rowland's a bad example because he's a gold. You won't be able to sign as gold stars initially this offseason, but you can obviously progress into gold during the season. Let's take, Brett Zapadinsky, for example, Greg. If Brett wanted to be exactly the same player as he was this season, you could obviously make that happen to the value. I think that missing the opportunity as a player to go through and create your guy from scratch and to make him as talented or not as talented in specific situations and scenarios as you want them to be, I think is an incredible value that that just isn't found everywhere. It is found in other places and other tech sims and all sorts of, player progression is not a new concept. It's just a new concept to the SFL, and it's a complex one because all those changes have to be made on the back end. But we've worked very hard over the last really 2 months developing a specific system. We ramped up all of that over the last 3 weeks when we got owner approval to pursue the idea, owner approval to launch the idea, and to finalize it and to have this broadcast here tonight. All right, it's 8:30. Does anybody have any further questions on this system? Again, you can watch the review of this on demand. I want to remind everybody of our upcoming schedule coming up. We've got the Season 10 reveal. We've got SFL Honors coming up on Thursday. Obviously, Season 10 reveal is tonight. SFL Expansion announcements coming on Monday. Media Day is the following day, followed by the Championship. Again, Media Day and the Championship are on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/simulationfl. Make sure you are subscribed to that channel or following that channel so that you get notifications when we go live. This is all coming up here on our broadcasts on the SFL Network, on YouTube and Twitch. We're going to be on the front page of Twitch. We're so excited for the opportunity. Should crack easily our viewership record. Can't wait for the SFL Awards show. We've got some surprises coming for there as well. Voting is about to close on that, so make sure if you have not voted, go to the awards channel of the SFL Discord and make sure you get your votes in. Obviously, we'll close the channel leading up to the award show. We'll prepare, and I promise you, even though you may know or have an inkling or an idea of who is going to win, there's a lot of close voting still out there right now. You're going to want to tune into the show. We're going to have highlights of these guys. We're going to have video, and we're going to be presenting some people with some very special honors that night too, not just people that are currently in the league. So make sure you tune in for the SFL Honor Show Thursday night right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. With that, folks, it looks like Dion asks, is there a spot for players to pick their own equipment? So this calculator right now online is simply to build your player. You will still be able to pick your own equipment. It's not built into this because the object of this player creation system is to send this out to as many teams as you need to or want to. People don't need your equipment, right? They're not looking for your equipment or what type of visor you're going to wear or what your number's going to be, right? That's all for finalizing the contract process. This is about finalizing your build, finalizing how much you're going to cost the team towards their cap. Yeah, you're still going to be able to do all of those customizable things with players that you've normally been able to do. This is just the custom player builder that allows us to build players according to an overall value so the teams can fit under the cap. Dark Moon asks, if a guy or a person can save his points for that player, how can he not be OP unless you have a point ranking or position ranking? I'm not really understanding that question. I'm sure it'll be answered. Again, all of the weekly submissions during the season will be made on Discord through a private players channel. Each channel will be specific to the team, so all the players will be in there. Your coaching staff will be in there. Obviously, everybody will be in there, similar to what your private team channel looks like now, except this channel will be specifically to submit your adjustments each week. So you might submit, I want to do a +2 in broken tackles. That's all you have to put. We'll make the adjustment on the back end. If at some point you say, I want to do a +2 on my broken tackles and you're already in 89, we may say, hey, look, you maxed out your broken tackles this week. You can't make any more adjustments to broken tackles, and leave it at that. So you obviously, through the player calculator, this is all of this stuff on the website, just in an uglier, grosser looking way. Obviously, there you see what the silver threshold would be for a running back, for example. But yeah, you'll be able to keep track yourself of your player if you want to make sure that your values are where you want them to be. Obviously, it's going to be pretty simple. You're going to get an email confirming that you sent all this to the team. You just get out a piece of paper and scratch out what your broken tackles used to be and put in what your new broken tackles is, and boom, there you go. You know what's going on with your player. So it's going to be pretty simple to track your progression yourself. Right, you can only save up progression for 2 weeks because a player is not going to he's not going to be below average for 9 straight weeks and then in week 10 all of a sudden be incredible, right? A progression and improvement of a professional football player does not happen every month. It happens every day, slowly but surely, and progressing your player in a way that's going to help your team, in a way that's going to help yourself and your career. That is the point of the whole system, and to get to give players a reason to be active and involved with their team and feel like they are a part of their organization, and that there's a reason to invest time, energy, and effort, because there is. And we want players to feel that, what owners and coaches have felt for the last 4.5 years in the SFL. Ronald Cochran asks, can a coach adjust a player? Again, a player can get advice from a coach. Say, hey, coach, what should I do this week? What's your advice? But the player has to physically make the adjustment. If the player cannot get online on a Tuesday at some point for 10 seconds in 24 hours and say, I want you to do this to my player, then they don't deserve the progression in terms of the league has made it as easy as we possibly can for players to participate in the whole team building process. So all we ask is that you participate. You're more than welcome to talk to your coaches or heed to your coach's advice or do anything in that way. You don't have to make decisions by yourself if you don't want to. You don't have to take the advice of your coach if you don't want to. You don't have to do any of those things. And owners and coaches know coming in to this system and process that you can't be upset at a player choosing to improve his skill sets outside of practice. You can only control what you can control in practice, on the team facility, on the field. And so, players being fully immersed in that whole process and procedure is something that we wanted to bring and something that players said they wanted. Dark Moon says correct, or yes, it's correct. He says, if, let's say your tackle is an 89, that's maxed out. You would have to put your points elsewhere, right? So if this running back was a hurdling beast here, and he was just maxed out all the way, you can't be higher than an 85 jump. You can't. You're just in the system. You have the highest jump of any player in the SFL. Nobody can jump higher than you, and nobody should be able to jump higher than you, because if they were able to jump higher than you, they wouldn't be human, right? They'd be breaking the game. They'd be doing something that would be unrealistic, and maybe jump is not the best. Broken tackles. If it's cranked up to 100, all pros saying you're going to kill somebody, so it can go up to 90. And if everything else on your guy is not very good, this is not going to be as effective. It's going to be more effective than it would be if it was a 75, but because your strength is not up, because your aggressiveness is not up, because your secure ball and consistency, because those aren't up, these broken tackles are going to happen more frequently than they were at 75, but they're not going to happen as frequently as if some of these other attributes were better, right? If some of these, if your player is not living up to the billing across the board, this will be effective, but it won't be as effective as it would be if the player is your complete, fantastic back. All right, I think we've reached our questions here. I appreciate we've held viewership, and I think everyone has got the concept, the right idea. Again, we are right around the corner from allowing you to be able to go in and play around with this system. Feel free to watch this video over. If you have any questions, you can talk with ownership in your private team channels. If you're on a current team, if you're a free agent, or even if you're a player and you want the answers from the most reliable source possible, please don't hesitate to send Director of Player Personnel Andrew Rastelli a private message. You can always give me a call or talk to me on Discord if you have any comments or questions about the system. I hope that it was explained in about as concise and as clean as we possibly could. This obviously matters a great deal to us, and we are only trying to improve the experience of all here in the Simulation Football League. That is our ultimate goal, and we want to build the best league from top to bottom as we possibly can. I'm SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine. We will see you here on the SFL Network for SFL Honors on Thursday, and then a big week next week with expansion announcements, Media Day, and the SFL Championship game on the front page of Twitch.tv. I thank you all for being awesome here tonight and asking great, educated questions. Enjoy, guys. Welcome to SFL Season 10, right around the corner.